Hi you guys, it's Mrs. Palmer. I have put together a video to help you practice some problems so that you can retake your solving equations test. So we're going to go through each of the different skills that you need to be able to show that you know how to do for that test one at a time. Please take out a piece of paper and make sure you have something to write with, and then also you will need a calculator, so make sure that you have a calculator. As I go through each of these problems on the board, I want you to also write these problems down and do them with me on your piece of paper. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so one of the skills that you need to be able to show that you know how to do on your test is you need to be able to combine like terms. Like terms are terms that have the same variables raised to the same powers. If the term does not have a variable, we call that a constant. And you can always combine constants with constants. Okay, so let's look through these examples here that I have up on the screen. And if we're going to combine the like terms, that means that we want to combine the ones that have the same variables to the same powers. So we have a 7x, we have a positive 8, we have a negative 4x, and we have a positive 2. Okay, remember that if there is a subtraction sign in front of a number, that makes that number negative. Okay, so having a subtraction sign in front of the number is the same thing as that number being negative. When we combine like terms, we are always adding, okay? And we add the coefficients and keep the variables the same. So, 7x, that is a like term with negative 4x. So in your calculator, if you put in 7 plus negative 4, you get 3. And that would be 3x. The variables stay the same. We can also combine a positive 8 with a positive 2, and that would be a positive 10. Now, this is our simplified answer. We cannot combine 3x and 10 because this one has an x and this one doesn't. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the next one. And we're just going to go through and talk about each of these terms. So we have a negative 5x, we have a negative 6, we have a positive 2x, and we have a negative 4. So when we combine like terms, we're going to combine the ones that have the same variables to the same powers. So we can combine the negative 5x and the negative 2x, and we do that by taking negative 5, adding it to 2, and that gives us a negative 3x. We can also combine the negative 6 with the negative 4. Remember that because there's a subtraction sign in front of the 6, it makes it negative. And because there's a subtraction sign in front of the 4, it makes it negative. So in your calculator, you would put in negative 6 plus negative 4, which is negative 10. Okay, for the next one, we have a 7r. We have a positive 3g, we have a negative 5r, we have a positive 7, we have a positive 1g, and we have a negative 10. Remember, when you combine like terms, you're always adding. So we can combine the 7r with the negative 5r. Because there's a subtraction sign in front of it, it makes it a negative. So in your calculator, you would put in 7 plus negative 5, and that would be 2r. We can also combine the positive 3g and the positive 1g, and that would be positive 4g. And then we can also combine the 7 with the negative 10. Because there's a subtraction sign in front of it, it makes it negative. So 7 plus negative 10 is negative 3. And this would be our simplified answer. We can't combine any of these because they are not like terms. This one has an r, this one has a g, and this one is just a constant with no variable. Okay, so for the next one, we have a negative 3x, a positive 6, a positive 2y, a negative 4x, a negative 10, and a positive 7y. if we are going to combine the like terms, we want to combine the ones that have the same variables to the same powers. So we can combine a negative 3x with a negative 4x. Remember that because there's a subtraction sign in front of the 4x, it makes it negative. So negative 3 plus negative 4 is negative 7x. We can also combine the positive 6 with the negative 10, and that would be negative 4. And we can also combine the positive 2y with the positive 7y, and that would be positive 9y. Okay, so the big things to remember when you are combining like terms are that you're always adding, and if there is a subtraction sign in front of a number, it makes it negative. If there is no sign or an addition sign in front of a number, it makes it positive. Okay, so the next thing that you need to be able to do on this solving equation test is you need to be able to use the distributive property. The distributive property is a property of multiplication, and how you use the distributive property is if there is a number next to the parentheses, that is implied multiplication. And if there is more than one term inside the parentheses, you have to multiply both terms that are inside the parentheses by the number that is out front. So here we have 4 times by x plus 2. So we have to multiply the 4 by both the x and the 2. That's called using the distributive property. So 4 times x is 4x. 4 times a positive 2 is a positive 8. And then we cannot combine any like terms here because this one has an x and this one is just a constant. Okay, so for the next one, we have the number 3 that is right in front of the parentheses. And inside the parentheses, we have 2 terms. We have an x and we have a negative 3. Because there is a subtraction sign in front of this 3, it makes it negative. So when we distribute, we're going to multiply the 3 by the x, and that is 3x. We're also going to multiply the 3 by the negative 3, and that will be negative 9. And then neither one of these are like terms. This one has an x, this one's just a constant, so this is our answer, 3 times x minus 9. For the next one, we have negative 3 times by 3y and a negative 5. So negative 3 times 3y is negative 9y. Negative 3 times negative 5 is a positive 15. And then this right here is our simplified answer. Okay, let's go to the next skill. Well, and actually before we go to the next skill, let me show you one more thing about the distributive property. When you use the distributive property, it doesn't matter which side of the parentheses the number is on. If there is a number next to a parentheses or a parentheses next to a number, either way, you have to distribute the number to both terms that are inside the parentheses. The number that is in front of this 4, there's not, or the sign that's in front of this 4, there's no sign here. So that means it's a positive 4. So 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 2x is a positive 4x. Okay. The way that this one is different is, again, there's no sign in front of this 3, so that makes it positive. There is a subtraction sign in front of this 2x, which makes it negative. So 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times negative 2x is a negative 4x. Okay, now for these 3, they say your turn. So what I want you to do is pause the video. I want you to try each of these on your own, and then I want you to push play once you have them done to see if you got the correct answer. Okay, so let's go ahead and go through the answers and see if you got these correct. So 4 times x is 4x, and 4 times a negative 5 is a negative 20. For the next one, negative 6 times 2x is negative 12x, and negative 6 times by a negative 4. Remember that if there's a subtraction sign in front of a number, it makes it negative. So negative 6 times negative 4 is a positive 24. And then for the last one, even though the 2 is on the right side of the parentheses, We still need to distribute it. What we have to remember though is that there is no sign in front of the 4. So that means that it's positive. 2 times 4 is 8. There is a subtraction sign in front of the 7x, which means that it is negative. 2 times negative 7x is negative 14x. Okay, so now we are ready to put together distributing and combining like terms. So if something needs to be distributed, you always take care of that first. So as we look at this expression right here, because we have this 4 next to this parenthesis, we need to make sure that we distribute it to both of these terms before we combine like terms. So 4 times negative 2x is a negative 8x. 4 times 2 is 8. And then we still have our positive 10. Once we have distributed, now we combine like terms. We have a negative 8x. We have a positive 8, positive 10. We can combine the positive 8 and the positive 10 together, and that would give us positive 18. This is our simplified answer. We can't combine these because this one has an x and this one doesn't. Okay, so for the next one, we have this 4 that we need to distribute to both of these terms. 4 times 3x is 12x. 4 times a negative 6 is a negative 24. Then we still have a negative 12. At this point, we are going to then combine the negative 24 and the negative 12, and that is going to give us a negative 36. Okay, sorry, I don't know what happened to my pen right there. Now we can write this as 12x minus 36 or 12x plus a negative 36. These are the same answer. Okay, so let's do the third one right here, and then I'm going to let you practice a couple. Okay, so on this next one we have 5 times by, in the parentheses, a negative 3x and a positive 3, so that's going to be negative 15x plus 15. Then we have a positive 24, and from there we're going to combine like terms. So we can combine the 15 and the 24, and that gives us 39. So negative 15x plus 39. Okay, now I want you to do these two, number 1 and 2, on your own paper. So push pause, do these on your own paper, and then push play and see if you got them correct. Okay, so let's go ahead and see if you got these correct. So 3 times negative 2x is negative 6x. 3 times 7 is 21. Then we have a positive 15, so that would give us negative 6x plus 36. For the second one, negative 2 times 4x is negative 8x, and negative 2 times negative 6 is a positive 12, and then we have a positive 20. So to combine like terms here, we would combine the 12 with the 20, and that would be 32. Okay, so that is the first 2 sections of your test. Now we are ready to talk about how to solve one-step equations. So, an equation is different than an expression in that an equation has an equal sign. So the way that you tell the difference between an expression and an equation is if there is an equal sign. You simplify expressions, but you solve equations. Okay? So these 3 right here, these are examples of equations. X plus 5 equals 10, x minus 6 equals negative 5, 12 equals x plus 4. In an equation, what you know is that the left side is equal to the right side. So when we solve an equation, when we find the solution of an equation, We're trying to find the value of the variable that will make the equation true, that will make the left side equal to the right side. So the solution for this one would be 5, because if I plug 5 in for the x, 5 plus 5 equals 10. The solution for this one would be 1, because if I plug 1 in for the x, 1 minus 6 is negative 5. The solution for this one would be 8, because when I plug 8 in for the x, that's what makes the equation true. Okay, now these three that I just gave you, these were easy to find the solution of by just looking at them and guessing and checking, but it's not always that easy. And so because of that, we need a system to help us solve equations. So the system that we use when we're solving a one-step equation is we are going to isolate the variable. That means that we're going to get the variable all by itself. The way that we do that is by using inverse operations. Inverse operations are operations that undo each other. So if you have an addition, the inverse operation of that is subtraction. Or if you have a subtraction, the inverse operation of that is addition. If you have a multiplication, the inverse operation of that is division. Or if you have a division, the inverse operation of that is multiplication. Okay, so let's look at these three that I gave you earlier, and let's use our system for solving an equation. So we need to isolate the variable. So here's our variable x, by using inverse operations to get rid of anything or any operation that's been done on the same side as the variable. So we have an x plus 5 equals 10. If we want this right here to just be an x, we need to cancel out the plus 5. The way that we cancel out a plus 5 is by doing a subtract 5, because subtraction is the inverse operation of addition. A plus 5 minus 5 cancels, so we're left with a 1x. And this plus 5 minus 5 cancels, so we're left with a 1x on the left side equal to 10 minus 5, which is 5. And we know that 5 is the solution of this equation, because 5 is what we can plug in for the variable to make the equation true. So for the next one, if we want to isolate this x, if we want to get the x all by itself, that means we have to get rid of the subtraction of 6. So the opposite of subtracting 6 is adding 6. And whatever you do on one side of an equation, you have to do the same thing on the other side. So on the left side, we're left with an x equal to, on the right side, if you combine a negative 5 and a positive 6, you get a positive 1. And then for the last one, this one is a little bit different in that the x is on the right side of the equation. And it doesn't matter where your variable is, if it's on the left side or the right side, wherever it is, you have to cancel out anything that's been done on the same side as the variable. So we want to get this variable all by itself. And we're going to do that by getting rid of the plus 4, because that's what's on the same side as the variable. So in order to isolate the variable, we have to get rid of the plus 4. To get rid of a plus 4, we use a minus 4 or a subtract 4. And whatever we do on one side of the equation, we have to do the same thing on the other side. X equals 8 is our solution. Okay, so let's go through a few more of these. On this one, we have x plus 8 equals negative 8. So the first thing I'm going to do is figure out where my variable is, and then I'm going to figure out what operation has been done on the variable. So we've got an x plus 8. And in order to isolate that variable, we have to get rid of the addition of 8 by using a subtraction. And because we subtract 8 on the left side, we also have to subtract 8 on the right side. So 1x is equal to, remember that you're always adding, okay, when you're combining integers. So negative 8 plus negative 8 is a negative 16. This is our solution. Now this one is a little bit different. On this one, we have an integer right next to a variable. And whenever you have an integer or a number or a fraction right next to a variable, In algebra, that's implied multiplication. So this is negative 2 times by x. In order to get the x all by itself, we have to get rid of the multiplication of negative 2. The opposite of multiplying is dividing. And if we divide by 2 on the left side, we have to divide by negative 2 on the left side, we have to divide by a negative 2 on the right side. What you want to be very careful of is this is a negative 2. So the only way that this is going to be a positive 1x is if we divide by a negative 2. So that's going to give us a positive 1x. Negative 2 divided by negative 2 leaves us with a positive 1x equal to negative 14 divided by negative 2, which is positive 7. Okay, for the next one, we have x on the right side. The operation that's been done on the variable is subtraction. This is x subtract 15. So to get the variable all by itself, we're going to undo the subtraction by using addition. Negative 13 plus 15 is 2. So 1x equals 2. Okay, for this one we have a fraction, and I know sometimes when we see fractions it makes us get all panicky, but even though there's a fraction here, we're going to follow the same process that we followed on all of the other ones. If we want to isolate the variable, we're going to do that using inverse operations. This is 2/3 times by x. So if we want to get rid of the multiplication of 2/3 so that the x is all by itself, we have to divide by 2/3. And if we divide the left side by 2/3, we have to divide the right side by 2/3. Okay, so 2/3 divided by 2/3. That's going to give us a 1x. Now you can either do this 10 divided by 2/3 in your calculator, or to divide 10 by 2/3, we actually multiply by the reciprocal of 2/3. And then to multiply fractions, you do top times top over bottom times bottom. 10 times 3 is 30. 1 times 2 is 2. 30 divided by 2 is 15. Okay, and you should have your calculators out. I asked you to get your calculator out at the beginning of this lesson, and so feel free to use your calculator. That would be the best thing to do to make sure that you get these correct. Okay, the next one, 3/4 times by x equals 20. So again, we're not going to panic if we see the fraction. This is just 3/4 times by x. So to get rid of a multiplication of 3/4, we use division. And if we divide the left side by 3/4, we have to divide the right side by 3/4. 3/4 divided by 3/4 leaves us with 1x equal to, if we do 20 divided by 3/4, that's going to be the same thing as 20 times by 4/3, which gives us 80/3. Okay, for this one, we haven't seen one like this before. This is x divided by 5. Okay, this is x divided by 5 equals negative 10. So if we want this to just be an x, we have to get rid of the divided by 5 by multiplying by 5. The divided by 5 multiplied by 5 is what cancels to leave us with a 1x. And if we multiply the left side by 5, we have to multiply the right side by 5. So x equals negative 50. That is our solution. Okay, so again, this is x divided by 4. The inverse operation of division is multiplication. We're going to times both sides by 4 to get rid of the divided by 4. So x equals 12 times 4, which is 48. Okay, so your turn. Please push pause. Try each of these on your own. Make sure that you can do each of these correctly. Okay, so let's go ahead and go through the answers. The first one, negative 4 times by x equals negative 20. To get rid of the multiplication of negative 4, we divide by negative 4, so x equals 5. The second one, negative 12 equals x minus 13. To isolate this variable right here, we need to get rid of the subtraction of 13. So to do that, we add 13. Whatever we do on one side, we have to do the same thing on the other side. Negative 12 plus 13 is 1. For the next one, x divided by 7 equals 5. The way that we get rid of a division is by using multiplication. We have to multiply by 7 on both sides. That leaves us with x equals 35. And the last one is a fraction, but we're not going to panic. This is 2/5 times by x. To get rid of a multiplication, we use division. So we would divide by 2/5 on both sides. So x equals 6 divided by 2/5, which ends up giving us 15. Okay, so that is one-step equations. The next part of your test is solving a two-step equation. So when you solve a two-step equation, there are going to be two things that you need to get rid of in order to get the variable all by itself. And when you do a math problem, you always follow the order of operations. So you always do parentheses, then you take care of evaluating the exponents, then you do multiplications and divisions, working left to right, then you do additions and subtractions, working left to right. When you solve an equation, you are undoing the math problem to be left with just the variable. So you do this following the reverse order of operations. You always get rid of the addition or subtraction part before you get rid of the multiplication or division part. Okay, so if I give you this example, negative 3x plus 4 equals 13, this is negative 3 times by x. This is negative 3 times by x plus 4 equals 13. So before we get rid of this multiplication of negative 3, we're going to get rid of this addition of 4 by doing a subtract 4 from both sides. So negative 3 times x equals 9. And then to get rid of the multiplication of negative 3, we're going to divide both sides by negative 3. So x equals negative 3. That is our solution. Okay, for the second example, we have x divided by 4, subtract 8 equals 12. But before we get rid of the divided by 4, we are going to get rid of the subtract 8 by doing a positive 8 or a plus 8 on both sides. So that leaves us with x divided by 4 equals 20. From there, we get rid of the divided by 4 by using multiplication. We times by 4 on both sides, so x equals 80. That is our solution. Okay, so let's look at a few more two-step, and then I'm going to have you practice a few two-step, and then you will be ready to move on to working on your ALEKS assignment so that you can retake your test. Okay, so we have negative 2x plus 5 equals 13. Negative 2 times x plus 5 equals 13. Before we get rid of this multiplication of negative 2, we're going to get rid of the addition of 5 by using subtraction. So we subtract 5 on both sides, which leaves us with negative 2x equal to positive 8. Then to get rid of the multiplication of negative 2, we use division. We divide by negative 2 on both sides. X equals negative 4. Voila, that is our solution. If we plug negative 4 in for the x in our original equation, that is what makes the equation true. Okay, let's look at the next one. X divided by 2 minus 4 equals 10. The first thing we're going to do is get rid of the subtraction of 4 by adding 4. Now we have x divided by 2 equals 14. To get the x by itself, we have to get rid of the divided by 2 by using multiplication. We times by 2 on both sides, so x equals 28. And on the last one, here's our variable. Our variable is being divided by 3, but before we get rid of that division, we're first going to get rid of the 4 by doing a subtract 4. 4 minus 4 is what cancels out the 4. And because we did a subtract 4 on the left side, we have to do a subtract 4 on the right side. X divided by 3 equals 36. And now we're not done yet. We want this variable to be all by itself, so we get rid of the divided by 3 by multiplying by 3 on both sides. So x equals 108. So that is two-step equations. Now it is your turn to practice, so I want you to push pause. Go ahead and do these ones on your own, and then I am going to go through the answers with you, and then you're going to be ready to move forward with doing your ALEKS assignment. Okay, so here we go. Let's go ahead and go through these answers one at a time. So for number 1, we have 4 times x plus 6 equals negative 10. The first thing that we would do would be to get rid of the plus 6 by doing a subtract 6. Now we have 4 times x equals negative 10 plus negative 6, which is negative 16. And then to get rid of the multiplication of 4, we use division. So x equals negative 4. Okay, on number 2, here's our variable. We want to isolate it. We're first going to get rid of the 5 by doing a subtract 5, which we do that on both sides. So now we have x divided by 4 equals 15. And then to get the x by itself, we have to get rid of the divided by 4. The inverse operation for division is multiplication. So we're going to times by 4 on both sides. So x equals 60. For number 3, we're solving for this x. We first get rid of the subtract 2 by doing a plus 2 on both sides. So now we have x divided by 8 equals, in your calculator, you're going to put in negative 12 plus 2, which is negative 10. And now to get rid of the division of 8, we use multiplication. So x equals negative 80. And then on the last one, we're solving for the x. We get rid of the subtract 6 by doing a plus 6. We do that on both sides. So we get 11 equals 12 times x. And then our last step would be to divide by 12 on both sides. Okay. You guys, you did it. You made it through the whole review video for solving equations. The next thing that I want you to do is I have created an ALEKS assignment for you that says Solving Equations Review. So I want you to go in and do that ALEKS assignment, hit submit, and then go back and see if you can figure out what you did wrong on the ones that you missed. Once you have completed that ALEKS assignment, I am going to have you retake your solving equations test. Okay? If there are any of these things that you are still confused about, so if you don't know how to combine like terms, or if you don't know how to distribute and combine like terms, or if you're struggling with solving a one-step equation, or if you're struggling with solving a two-step equation, please, please, please let me help you. Come in before school, after school, ask to be requested during den time. I really want you to be able to be successful with this. So with that said, I hope that whenever you're watching this, that you have a good day and that ALEKS assignment goes well for you. And I will see you soon.